Hello everyone, today I'd like to present my fourth presentation, my fourth video in my series Economic Basics. So what I'm going to be looking at today is the market. And when I say market, I'm not talking about the stock market or anything like that. I'm talking about a place where people can trade their goods or services and so on in a particular place. So let's just do a quick recap of what we've covered off so far. So in our first presentation, our first video, we had a look at a very simple one-person scenario living on an island, so they were maximizing their utility between collecting coconuts and resting. In our second presentation, we looked at what happens if you have one more person. So we talked about cooperation between those two people. And the third presentation, we looked at the differences between comparing time and comparing money, and why this series was much more focused on looking at time. So let's just take us back to where we left off with the second presentation. So that was, we had two people. So now we're going to assume that there's far more than two people. We're going to assume like you've got a whole colony now. All of us, all together. So it's going to be a lot of different skill sets, a lot of different people doing different things. At the moment we'll keep it fairly simple. We're still looking at, again, coconuts and shelter and stuff like that. We might make it a little bit more complex now. So we have the coconuts, we have the shelter. So you might have some people that have developed skills in developing technology to improve shelter building, so hammers and saws and things like that. They also may have developed things to help coconut collecting too, so maybe a way of knocking the coconuts down with a tool. There'll also be others that may have skills in entertaining us. They might be very funny, they may be performers and dancers and singers and all of that, which can actually improve our relaxation time or downtime. So again, we've got people with different skills specializing in different things. So let's now take a look at the utility function again. So it doesn't really look that much different from the utility functions we looked in our previous videos. So again, we've still got relaxation in there, and that again is enhanced by the quality of the shelter and now also by the quality of the entertainment. We've got C for coconuts, which in a broader sense could be food, or even in a broader sense, you'd be looking at your basic necessities that you definitely need. So you'd be looking at food and water and all of that stuff combining in there. And we've also got a negative value in there, which could be the collection of coconuts, or it could be shelter building and stuff like that. And that's actually will be less now if we've got people working on technology. So you become more efficient in doing stuff. So you need to spend less time producing the same amount as what you did before. So maybe you can collect 8 coconuts instead of 4 coconuts within 1 hour. So therefore you don't need to work as long. So therefore you don't have that loss in utility. I've also added in an XY factor into this as well, just briefly, just to show the increased utility you get through increased cooperation around elements of the work that you're doing. So for example, if you've collected, 20 coconuts and there's 20 people, so you'd only get to enjoy 1 coconut, so in effect your Y would be 20. But if you've got several other people helping you as well, then in effect you can actually have more coconuts if they've collected some as well, so you wouldn't have such a small share of the load, and therefore you would get greater enjoyment out of it. But again, this is just a fairly general utility function. I don't want to get too much into the details, it can get quite mathematical. But just to show you the mathematical relationship between the various elements of things that give you utility and things that take it away, and how things like improved technology can actually influence that. So what happens next? So people have done their various things, they've collected their coconuts, they've gone fishing, they've built shelter, they've collected other things, wood, and dropped things, so they've got all sorts of stuff. So it gets more complicated when you have more people. So there will be a form of exchange going on. So in an ideal world, people would just bring their stuff to a center, and you just go there and take what you need, and everybody would be happy, everybody gets what they need. And that all sounds great, and that all sounds perfect. But in the world, it doesn't quite operate that way. This is an ideal scenario if we all live in harmony. If we don't live in harmony, then, well, let's say we don't live in harmony, but if there isn't that level of trust that maybe you can establish if we just got 2 people. So what happens then? So in a larger community, there's going to be people that don't know each other so well. So they're less familiar with each other. So there could be more of an element of a lack of trust, potentially. So how can we resolve that lack of trust? So we're going to look at that in a second. Also as well, some people may feel that they deserve more than others. Like you could have someone who's very strong and seems to be doing a lot more work, and someone else who's a little bit more laid back, doing less work, but then enjoying just as much as everyone else. So potentially there could be, we call it a little bit of jealousy in there, not to say jealousy, but people feel that they're more deserving, that they should get paid for the extra work they're doing or the extra quality that they're bringing. So I don't see this necessarily as a huge problem, because there's always a sense of pride. So for example, you have someone who maybe doesn't do as much work, or maybe not doing any work. It's going to hurt them socially. They're going to have problems interacting with others within the group, in the sense that there's a loss of pride in the sense that they haven't contributed, and that social interaction will actually encourage them to do their fair share, just so that they can, have that sense of pride that they're contributing to the group. So these problems may not be huge. So what I've got here now is the, what do they call that? Now it's a Venus project. So that's a very interesting idea. So this is, again, this is a very, very high-tech idea where people are all working within their specialist areas and specialist groups and stuff like that. And there's no central government or control. Everybody is basically autonomous to do what they like, but it's assumed that people will always work for the greater good. So that doesn't cover another element I want to talk about now, and that's greed. Some people are greedy for whatever reason or other. They want more, whether they deserve more, whether they feel entitled to more, I don't know. But there's an element of greed. So how can we resolve that? So there's several approaches to looking at that. And what I've got here is a quote from Gandhi. "I do not believe in the doctrine of greatest good for the greatest number. It means in its nakedness that in order to achieve the supposed good of 51%, the interest of 49% may be, or rather should be, sacrificed. It is a heartless doctrine and has done harm to humanity. The only real dignified human doctrine is the greatest good of all." So it's about people working together within a community to determine what is the best outcome for everyone without necessarily any sacrifice. So in economics, generally we talk about a Pareto optimal solution, which is the best overall solution, but other people will lose out, but it's just as long as you've got a group that gains more than those that lose out. So what you can look at, though, is what we got a Cowlor-Hicks solution, where you've got those gains that outweigh the losses, but those that lose out are compensated by those that gain. So in fact, everybody gains, even if that is just in a small way. So what else do we have? We've got authority. This is something I'm going to touch on, I think, 2 videos from now, so I'm not going to talk about it too much in regards to what is authority. Just very quickly here, authority could be put in place to make sure people behave accordingly to a set of rules, so people don't, I guess, take advantage of each other. So you wouldn't have, one person doing all the work and everybody else lazing around. It would be there to put in place to make sure everybody's doing their fair share. People aren't taking when they shouldn't be, and things like that. What else is there? There's trade. So, for example, if you don't have that element of trust where people can just come and go and take as they like, you can have trade. So how would you do that? So someone who's collecting apples might want some bananas. So maybe you would exchange, let's say, 3 apples for 2 bananas, and they come to some agreement around that. And again, you could be exchanging for wood. Maybe you'd exchange 3 bananas for 1 piece of wood. Or someone is, an entertainer, a good dancer. Maybe they perform half an hour for you, maybe you give them 3 apples and 2 bananas, and so on. But that gets a little bit tricky there, in the sense that you're trading between groups of people using various different things, but you don't have that level of consistency. And also, as well as, you could be dealing with perishables. We talked about fruit, bananas and apples. You may be holding on to a banana, but eventually you're going to have to eat it if you can't exchange it. So it doesn't have that value. It's not durable. You have other things like wood, for example. You're building stuff. It's very big and bulky, and you just can't carry it around or travel it around with you to make exchanges. So again, that's problematic. And there's also certain things that can't necessarily be split up. Like, for example, if you're using rocks and stuff like that, you can't easily divide them up into pieces. And again, you don't have that consistency either between various prices, because you don't have a single unit of currency that you can make comparisons with. Like, how do you compare bananas with apples, with wood, with branches, with someone providing a service, or any of that stuff? So that takes us now to our next video, is where we discuss money and the function of money, and how money addresses some of those problems, but also creates some of its own problems as well. Okay, that takes us to the end of today's video. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this, just click the like button, and if you want to see more in this series, so I've still got quite a few more videos, just hit the subscribe button. Thank you very much.